Hi, welcome back. I recently received a YouTube from a Professor John Mearsheimer. I've been a long-time subscriber to his YouTube channel, and quite honestly, I do think he does share some very accurate views of geopolitical situations and what have you. I'm going to read you a brief overview of who he is for those of you that do not know who Professor Mearsheimer is. Then I'm going to actually upload this to both YouTube channels, Something Feels Wrong and Cabrera RD, where normally I never upload geopolitical situations on Cabrera RD since it has to do primarily with the little town I live in and exposes it to the greater audience that I can. However, in this case, since it does affect the DR directly, I will be posting it to both. I want to read this brief overview of Mearsheimer, and we'll continue on with the video. Professor John Mearsheimer is a renowned American political scientist and leading scholar of international relations. He's known for his realist theories, especially offensive realism, which explains great power competition, and his prominent role in policy debates, particularly concerning U.S. foreign policy and conflicts like Ukraine and Iraq. He's a distinguished service professor at the University of Chicago, a prominent author and a frequent commentator on global politics, arguing states are driven by security in an anarchic system. His policy influence, known for critical analysis of U.S. foreign policy, opposing the Iraq War and commentating on Ukraine, Israel, and China. His major works are authored The Tragedy of Great Power Politics, The Israel Lobby and U.S. Foreign Policy, and The Great Delusion, among others. His background is he's a West Point graduate and former U.S. Air Force officer before earning his Ph.D. and starting his academic career. Sit back, watch this video, and I'll pick it up on the other side and lend a few comments as to what I think is accurate and what I think is inaccurate and what I think is actually amplified. We'll talk to you soon.
What happens when a small Caribbean nation decides that 200 years of American dominance is enough and chooses a different path forward? On December 23, 2024, the Dominican Republic officially canceled its foundational military agreements with the United States and signed a comprehensive strategic memorandum of understanding with Beijing, forever altering the balance of power in a region that Washington has considered its backyard since 1823. This isn't merely a commercial decision or diplomatic realignment. This is the rapid collapse of the Monroe Doctrine itself, the foundational principle that has governed American hemispheric policy for 2 centuries. When James Monroe declared in 1823 that European intervention in the Americas would be considered hostile acts against the United States, he wasn't offering protection to young Latin American republics. He was announcing the first manifestation of American imperialism. For 200 years, that doctrine justified more than 50 direct military interventions, CIA-sponsored coups, economic blockades, and the systematic imposition of puppet governments from Mexico to Argentina. The Dominican Republic itself experienced this imperial control firsthand in 1965 when democratically elected President Juan Bosch was removed by Lyndon Johnson's administration for threatening American sugar interests, leading to Operation Power Pack that landed 42,000 Marines on Dominican soil. I've spent decades studying imperial systems and their decline, and what we're witnessing in Santo Domingo represents exactly the kind of strategic defection that signals the end of hegemonic control. When client states in the imperial core begin choosing alternative patrons, the entire architecture of dominance starts crumbling from within. The timing of Dominican Republic's decision reveals the structural crisis facing American imperial management. Since the 2008 financial crisis, the United States has printed $8 trillion to maintain domestic stability while accumulating $33 trillion in national debt representing 130% of GDP. Foreign holders own 40% of Treasury bonds, with China paradoxically serving as the primary financier of the military capabilities Washington uses to encircle Chinese interests globally. The contrast between American and Chinese approaches to Dominican partnership could not be more stark. American offerings consisted of IMF loans with comprehensive conditionality requirements, military aid programs designed to subordinate national sovereignty, and implicit threats of dollar-based economic sanctions for non-compliance. Chinese proposals included concrete infrastructure development, productive investment without political conditions, and yuan-denominated trade arrangements that liberate countries from dollar dependency. The operational differences reveal deeper strategic philosophies that explain why Dominican leadership chose Beijing over Washington. Chinese President Xi Jinping didn't need to send aircraft carriers to win Dominican cooperation. While the Pentagon spends $800 billion annually on failed military adventures from Afghanistan to Ukraine, Beijing builds ports, roads, power plants, and processing facilities that materially transform local populations' lives. The panic within Pentagon planning circles reflects recognition that Dominican Republic's defection could trigger cascade effects throughout the Caribbean. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin reportedly warned that allowing China to consolidate its foothold in Dominican Republic could surrender control of the Western Hemisphere's most important trade routes, enabling Beijing to project influence from Santo Domingo to Puerto Rico, Jamaica, Haiti, and the entire American Atlantic coastline. General Laura Richardson, commanding U.S. Southern Command, noted that China already controls Panama Canal operations through Hutchison ports, maintains trade agreements with Argentina, Brazil, and Chile, and is now establishing permanent logistics infrastructure less than 1,000 kilometers from American mainland territory. This represents systematic encirclement by a power that understands geography better than the United States itself. Chinese Ambassador Chen Weihua's proposals to Dominican leadership included construction of new highways connecting Santo Domingo to the Haitian border, solar power installations guaranteeing energy self-sufficiency for the entire island, and international financial centers that would transform the Eastern Caribbean into an economic hub. Rather than seeking to subordinate Dominican Republic, China positioned itself as seeking partnership with a sovereign nation for mutual benefit. Beijing's broader strategy in Latin America has produced remarkable results that demonstrate the effectiveness of economic diplomacy over military coercion. Over the past 5 years, China-Latin America trade has grown 300%, while U.S. trade contracted 15%. Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, Peru, Chile, and now Dominican Republic conduct direct trade in yuan and local currencies, removing the dollar from $400 billion annually in commercial transactions. The security implications of Dominican Republic's alignment with China extend far beyond immediate military concerns. Chinese transfer of 5G telecommunications technology, satellite surveillance systems, and artificial intelligence capabilities will transform Dominican Republic into the Caribbean Communications Center, enabling Beijing to monitor all air and maritime traffic between the United States and South America from Santo Domingo. The domino effect has already begun throughout the Caribbean as other nations observe Dominican success in securing Chinese partnership without sacrificing sovereignty. Jamaica has opened trade negotiations with Beijing while reviewing its military agreements with Washington. Trinidad and Tobago signed petroleum exploration memorandums with Chinese companies and is considering yuan-denominated oil trade. Even the Bahamas, traditionally Washington's most loyal satellite in the Caribbean, is reassessing its strategic alignments. The collapse of the petrodollar system accelerates with every Dominican Chinese yuan sugar transaction, every Venezuela-India rupee petroleum sale, and every Brazil-Russia ruble soybean exchange. Each deal represents a fatal blow to the imperial financial system that has enabled Washington to live beyond its means for 8 decades while extracting wealth from the developing world through monetary manipulation. The structural differences between American and Chinese economic models explain why this transition has become irreversible. The United States operates a deindustrialized economy dependent on Chinese imports for everything from pharmaceuticals to critical electronic components for military infrastructure. Political polarization has fragmented domestic governance, while military capacity remains scattered across unproductive conflicts worldwide. China produces 28% of global industrial output, through a manufacturing economy supported by stable political systems that enable 30-year strategic planning. Chinese economic diplomacy offers genuine development rather than military domination, creating sustainable partnerships that serve mutual interests rather than extractive relationships that benefit only the hegemon. The emergence of multipolarity accelerates as BRICS expands membership, while even pro-American leaders like Argentina's Javier Milei find themselves forced by economic reality to continue trading with China and using yuan to finance manufacturing imports. Mexico, despite its dependence on American markets, systematically diversifies commercial relationships with Asia to reduce vulnerability to American economic pressure. The Caribbean serves as a laboratory for alternative development models because islands can experiment with different approaches without generating the immediate panic that similar transformations in Brazil or Mexico might produce. Haiti's continued tragedy demonstrates how the United States keeps potential success stories in permanent chaos to prevent independent development from inspiring regional emulation. Puerto Rico's dilemma illustrates the contradictions of American imperial control. As a colonial territory, Puerto Rico cannot freely choose economic partnerships, but Chinese-sponsored Dominican development will inevitably inspire Puerto Rican independence movements by demonstrating what autonomous development can achieve under Chinese partnership rather than American subordination. American responses to Dominican defection reveal the bankruptcy of imperial management strategies. Rather than matching Chinese infrastructure investment or development assistance, Washington relies on military threats, economic blackmail, and disinformation campaigns. These tactics no longer work because countries now have genuine alternatives that provide better terms without political interference. The technological dimension of Chinese partnership offers capabilities that American cooperation cannot match. Chinese investment in Dominican telecommunications infrastructure, renewable energy systems, and artificial intelligence applications provides technological advancement that accelerates national development while integrating Dominican Republic into global value chains on favorable terms. The financial implications extend beyond immediate trade arrangements to encompass fundamental changes in international monetary relationships. As more Caribbean nations adopt yuan-denominated trade and Chinese development financing, the dollar's role as the regional currency anchor erodes, reducing American ability to influence economic policy through monetary mechanisms. The geographic advantages of Dominican Republic's position make it particularly valuable for Chinese regional strategy. Control of Hispaniola provides surveillance capabilities over the entire Caribbean basin while offering logistics support for Chinese operations throughout Central and South America. The island's location enables projection of influence across multiple strategic theaters simultaneously. The demographic implications include not only immediate economic benefits for Dominican citizens, but long-term educational and technological partnerships that will transform the country's human capital development. Chinese universities are offering scholarship programs while Chinese companies provide technical training that creates skilled workforce capabilities unavailable through American partnership programs. The agricultural dimension involves Chinese investment in Dominican sugar, coffee, and tropical fruit production using advanced processing technologies that increase value-added exports while reducing dependence on raw commodity shipments. This approach contrasts sharply with historical American extraction of agricultural wealth without significant technology transfer or industrial development. The tourism implications could transform Dominican Republic into a hub for Chinese visitors to the Caribbean while developing hospitality infrastructure that serves broader international markets. Chinese investment in airport expansion, hotel construction, and recreational facilities provides economic diversification beyond traditional agricultural and mining activities. The environmental considerations include Chinese expertise in renewable energy development that could make Dominican Republic a regional leader in sustainable development while reducing dependence on imported fossil fuels. Solar, wind, and hydroelectric projects offer energy independence that enhances national sovereignty while demonstrating alternative development models for neighboring countries. The cultural implications involve increasing Chinese language education, cultural exchanges, and media relationships that expose Dominican citizens to alternative perspectives on development, governance, and international relations. This cultural opening reduces intellectual dependence on American narratives while expanding global awareness and strategic options. The military implications remain deliberately limited as China avoids establishing formal military bases that would provoke immediate American military responses. Instead, Chinese strategy focuses on dual-use infrastructure that provides security benefits without triggering escalatory dynamics that could destabilize the entire region. The legal implications involve Dominican withdrawal from treaty arrangements that subordinated national decision-making to American oversight while establishing new international legal frameworks based on sovereign equality and mutual benefit rather than hegemonic control and client state management. This historic shift represents more than bilateral relationship change between Dominican Republic and China. It demonstrates that the Monroe Doctrine era has ended, hemispheric hegemony is dissolving, and a multipolar world is emerging through every port, road, and trade agreement that liberates populations from 200 years of American imperial domination. The intelligence implications for American strategic planning are immediate and profound. Every assessment of Caribbean security must be fundamentally revised based on recognition that client states can successfully defect to rival powers without catastrophic retaliation. This demonstration effect encourages other potential defectors. The energy security dimension involves Chinese investment in Dominican renewable infrastructure that could make the island energy independent while providing regional demonstration sites for alternative development models. American energy companies lose market access while Chinese capabilities gain Caribbean presence. The shipping implications transform Caribbean transportation networks as Chinese port management establishes permanent presence in waters American naval forces have controlled since the 19th century. Trade route efficiency improves for China-Caribbean commerce, while American logistics companies face systematic displacement. The educational partnerships between Dominican and Chinese institutions create long-term relationships that reduce intellectual dependence on American academic systems while building human capital aligned with Chinese development models. Scholarship programs and research collaboration establish enduring connections. The technological transfer agreements provide Dominican Republic access to Chinese telecommunications, renewable energy, and artificial intelligence innovations that American companies have been reluctant to share due to competitive or security concerns. Chinese technology transfer demonstrates genuine partnership. The historical parallel to other imperial declines suggests Dominican defection represents the beginning of systematic client-state abandonment that accelerates as alternatives prove successful. British, French, and Soviet imperial systems experienced similar cascade failures when client states discovered viable alternatives. The message is clear and irreversible. The future belongs not to those who destroy, but to those who build, not to those who dominate, but to those who cooperate. Not to those who impose perpetual subordination, but to those who offer shared prosperity.
Okay, now that you've watched it, first and foremost, I'm sure for any of the viewers that did not know any of this was taking place, it must come as quite a shock to you. However, I want to relay what I think is some extraordinarily good news. And that is, I've always been in favor of countries developing their ties, not through a military force and an invasion, kind of like my way, or there's going to be some serious trouble, to a way of commerce and negotiation. The West, for such a long time, has had the advantage of its military strength, and it still remains a formidable military, but certainly not anything like it was in the 80s and 90s. And other countries have caught up, in my opinion, studying different types of military aspects. I think some have even exceeded its capabilities. However, be it as it may, what you're seeing taking place across the world is a paradigm shift from a unipolar to a multipolar world. A unipolar where America at one time ruled everything and other countries and nations had no choice but to fall into line or have critical consequences. I mean, I don't have to tell you about Iran, Afghanistan, Vietnam, Syria, Gaddafi, the whole 9 yards, okay? That has shifted, and shifted quite a while ago. It's just coming to fruition because it can no longer be kept under wraps. What the world is marrying is more of a unipolar concept. Thus the great success and growth of BRICS. And by the way, there is 18 other nations that are wanting to be involved with BRICS. So what nations have found, and I think particularly since the West used SWIFT as a weapon and the sanctions of Russia and China, the tariff situation, more and more countries are looking, well, like, wow, if we don't do that, we're liable to be next and be canceled. So what they've adapted to is we're moving away from the military rule, the strength rule, and getting involved in political coups, political overthrows, puppeted governments, and such, I think, disastrous consequences from this type of activity. And we're moving more and rapidly into a direction where a nation like China invests and infuses a lot of currency into a nation. However, while both nations, both ways, infuse currency, China's way is we have no intention of getting involved with overthrowing governments and installing our own puppet governments. We have no interest in telling you how you treat your citizens and your policies regarding your own citizens, whether it has to do with rights, whether it has to do with however you conduct your nation. Do what you want. It's not our nation. What we are asking for is we're willing to infuse a tremendous amount of capital for infrastructure, factories, technology, solar, and on and on. However, you must agree to do business with us for a certain length of time at certain price increases over certain increments. So if you had a choice and it was either our way or we're going to kind of make a mess of things, and let's use Venezuela as the latest, which is going to be a catastrophe. Might even be a second Vietnam, which is another country I forgot to mention earlier. Countries are moving away from that. So that's what the DR is doing. It is certainly not leaving America. The DR can't leave America. It has too many ties in terms of military, natural resources, umpteen projects, its tourism industry, exporting, importing. It can't leave America, nor does it have a desire to. But where I applaud the current government in power was Abinadar is not putting all his eggs in one basket. He's merging and allowing China to be very much involved with the future of the Dominican Republic. And I applaud that tremendously because the wealth is going from the west to the east. I hope he sees that, but in any event, what he's doing is a positive for the Dominican Republic. Please don't get the takeaway that, which is very inaccurate in this YouTube, by the way, that the DR is leaving America and going to pick up China as if it's implementing like 100% swap over. No. What is actually happening here is positive for the DR. It's playing the role much the same as the country of India. India is a member of BRICS. It is the largest population, but it also does a lot of negotiation with the West. So what it's doing is capitalizing from both sides. Right now, the way the geopolitical situation is, and in many places, and you have to agree with me with this, people don't talk anymore and agree to disagree, and they haven't for a long time. That was a psyop that was done on purpose, primarily considerably before the COVID time. And the general outlook is, if you don't see it my way, you're my enemy. Okay, the same thing with political. If you're not, let's say, a Democrat, you can't be a Republican, you're an enemy. If you're a Republican, you can't be a Democrat, you're an enemy. So they've taken difference of opinion and they've converted it into enemy or friend. This is the leading way to divide a nation from within, and this is what you're seeing right now. I rest my case with the amount of violence, as I stated on our Something Feels Wrong. A year and a half ago, I said halfway through 2025, expect a sharp uptick in violence. Well, it's only going to get worse in 2026. As a matter of fact, the way things are going, because of the ignorance of the citizenries, we're very liable to see a black swan and a contagion of a world war come 2026, and I say within the first quarter. It's just the information from our research, and so far we've been accurate. Remember, in 2016, we were announcing the breakout of this was going to be in Ukraine. 2016. We also said eventually time, not now, but eventually time, certain metals are going to come to fruition because of the COMEX situation. You can't over leverage 100 to 1. Eventually it's going to catch up to you when people make margin calls. I'm telling you now, the DR cannot and will not separate from the states. The DR is playing both superpowers amongst themselves. But I wanted to share this on both to just recap. This is a positive step for the DR. We will be importing more. As a matter of fact, all through the Caribbean, I understand the West is 15% down. I understand the East is almost 300% up in its trade negotiations with the Caribbean, not just with the DR, but the entire Caribbean region. It's a paradigm shift. It's nobody's fault. When corruption can no longer be sustained, they begin taking you to war. By dividing yourself and supporting both countries, that's only going to better the citizens of this country where I live. I'm for it 100%. So take it whichever way you want to, but this is definitely not a negative. It's all positive. We'll be receiving many more imports at better prices, better choices. We're going to do more business in our exporting in terms of fruits, vegetables. When one country has about 280 million potential visitors and another country has just under 2 billion, and the power shift and the economy is going in that direction, where do you think the future of your tourism business lies? I think the current party understands that. Let's hope this continues. But anybody who's been misled by this video, please chill. There's no way this country can leave the West. At least not yet. We'll talk to you soon.